I'm telling you, I love my own theme music. It's really not my theme music. I'm gonna have a theme song one day. I'm gonna come up on here and shock y'all with a theme song. But I still jam to that. I love it, love it, love it, love that countdown music. Who am I? I am Dr. Renita, and I am welcoming you, and you to Leadership Live 2021, week 12. 12, 12. Mm-hmm. 12. I am so excited to have you here with me tonight, here with my guest tonight. And who is Dr. Renita? For those of you all who are asking, I am an educational leadership strategist. I am an author of actually three books: Stepmom, Trials, Tribulations, and Triumphs, editions 1 and 2. I am also the author of While You Are Sleeping, the Perfect Children of All Ages book. I am a veteran educator, having served students all the way from kindergarten through college age. I am a wife, a mother of 4. I own 2 children, and I birthed 2 children. Stepmom, Trials, Tribulations, and Triumphs tells part of that story. Yes, it does. I am a mentor, a mentee, a speaker, a trainer. I am a minister. I am a queen. I am the current reigning Mrs. Black North Carolina, the East Coast USA National Talent Performer of the Year, and the Elite Southern Charms Ultimate Grand Supreme for North Carolina 2021. So I'm like a legit queen. Like I compete and I won. And I am so excited to be here with you tonight and my amazing guest. We're going to be talking about things that are critical. Honey, critical. So I'm going to go ahead and bring her in the room right now. Here she is,
Hello. Hello, queen of all things. I was like,
Kenya.
my goodness, I need to have a running tally of all the things that I am.
Hello, run it down.
I'm gonna have
It's a
to.
good reminder.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we feel like we are less than or we don't do that much because we didn't accomplish that much in a day,
Mm,
it is helpful to
yeah.
be reminded of who you really are and what you really do.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah,
Amazing.
yeah. Well, your list is not that short either.
But it ain't that long. But what I love is when you said you bought your two
Yeah,
kids.
yeah. I
Yeah.
own them.
You
I
own
paid for
them.
them.
You paid for
I
them.
paid a lot of money for them.
I mean, if we go back and look at hospital bills, it's true.
Well, I mean, but even the ones that I literally own and I didn't birth, I just go on food bill. Food bill
Yeah,
alone. It
indeed.
puts me in the ownership.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the food bill is
Yes.
high.
Yes. I I know.
But I am super excited to have you on today. You know, it's a lot of people out there. They talk about having business but besties. It's usually a person they can talk to about all kinds of things, business being especially one of them. Well, tonight you all are getting to meet one of my true and personal business besties.
Yes.
Without Kenya, it's a lot of things that in 2021, especially, I would not be up on. So I thank you. But we are here to talk about you and your topic, and we're getting ready to talk about that criticalness. So please tell the people about Kenya and give them a little bit of a view of
Mhm.
your topic.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna try to do it justice like you did. I am a mom of 2. I birthed my 2. I am a daughter. I am a child of 2 Haitian parents. So I come from a Haitian background. I am a marketer. I'm a communicator. I am a teacher, an educator. So a lot of the foundation of what I do in my work day to day is based on that educational foundation and principles. And so to kind of go into a little bit about what I do is I am the owner founder of Word Crumbs. Word Crumbs was birthed, gosh, I don't know, back in 2015 now, and it just sat there, and I had all these amazing ideas of things that I could do with words. I'm a public speaking teacher. I teach internship courses. So workplace communication, interpersonal communication, intro to comms, media and society, all these comms classes. And the whole time I was trying to understand what word crumbs was going to become, it was all based around words. And, just transparency, I have never been great at conversation. I've never been confident in public speaking. And so I recognize that it's a bigger issue than most people will acknowledge, because we talk every day, but we don't really acknowledge the reasons why our conversations may go wrong or go left or aren't as effective. So word crumbs is really about understanding what your speaking style is and how do we effectively apply it to our day to day, whether that's at work, in our families, in our personal relationships with our children, even with ourselves, right? How we talk to ourselves is very important. And I started a critical conversations arm to that platform where I focus on really speaking about and speaking to people about topics that are really hard to talk about. So that's where the critical conversations piece comes into play. And also understanding, how do we navigate conversations that may be tough, topics that may be tough, even though they may not be publicly tough to everyone else. But for us, what are our pain points in conversation? So that's a little bit of an overview of what I do and who I am. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight.
Wow. Oh, so I love the idea of word crumbs. I love the idea of word crumbs. But, and I want to talk about that because I think the idea of understanding your speaking style,
Mm-hmm.
I think that I would love to hear you flesh that out a bit more, because I think some people just think of their speaking style as their particular vernacular.
Right.
Or if they have a twinge of an accent because they're
Mm-hmm.
from different regions or different countries, they think, oh, that's my speaking style.
Right.
But when you define speaking style, how do you define that?
Yeah. So all that you said plays a factor or role into those things, right? Because there's an interpretation that happens when we have conversations. But our speaking styles are usually based off of habits and behaviors and like first memories, right? I always use this kind of quote that I think I came up with it, but trauma in past conversations will shape our future conversations, right? And that's what becomes our speaking style. We adapt the way we talk to people, the way we perceive information and conversations based off of how we've been treated in past conversations. So, I always say, for me, I have triggers in conversation based off of what I may have experienced as a young girl. So if I am in a conversation that lasts too long, or I feel like someone is talking at me, I immediately shut down, because that's how my upbringing was. It was a lot of talking at, and it brings me in this defense mode. And so my speaking style in that situation is that I close up, right? I shut down, and then I'm no longer receptive. And so to understand your speaking style is to understand when you are most effective in conversation. Doesn't mean you're most comfortable, but just most effective.
Wow. That's good. And I like the idea of trauma from previous conversations really shaping how you deal with conversation now. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's not just conversation, that's in everything.
Yeah.
Experiences dictate to you how you can and should react in a new
Yeah.
experience,
Yeah.
which I think can bring us to this idea of the critical conversation.
Mm-hmm.
If you're dealing with trauma to your speaking style, and now you need to have a conversation about something that is difficult or
Yeah.
tough, and it could be for you to have that conversation about, or if it's going to be tough for the person who's going to receive your portion of conversation.
Right.
um, and then your speaking style may or may not be honed yet,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're going into these conversations.
Yeah, I think it's also important to recognize that our speaking styles, or the way we um, enjoy conversation, may transition and change over time, right? As we grow into ourselves more, as we discover who we are and what we like more, those things may change, which is why sometimes we find relationships change, because we've evolved into a more refined space of understanding what we will and will not accept in conversations. I know for me, I have had a really, really difficult time talking about emotional topics or being vulnerable in conversation. So that has been, unfortunately, the detriment to many relationships because I could not do it for myself. Like I can go and help someone else discover emotions through word and conversation and break barriers, but for myself it was the most, and still is the most difficult thing for me to break down and try to address when it comes to critical conversations.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, one, I think it's very helpful that this is a pain point for you.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're helping others, how do you help them get beyond those walls? Because that's the way I look at it. It's just literally you run into a wall
Yeah.
and you need to have this conversation, but whoo, it's going to be a lot. How do you
Mm-hmm.
start to break down that wall so the voice can be heard?
Yeah. First step is being honest with yourself, right? Because in every conversation, we hold the responsibility for our part. We cannot blame someone else in a conversation gone wrong because we each, we've got roles to play. And
Right.
so understanding where that wall is understanding where your deficits are. And I don't say deficits in a negative way, but just understanding where the roadblocks are. A lot of this work and the journey is about self-healing and self-care and self-awareness. It's not just about learning all the perfect words and how to string them together and make this eloquent soliloquy of this speech. Like, people think public speaking and I'm going to be in front of a podium and I'm going to deliver the speech to thousands. No, this is public speaking, right? One-on-one is public speaking. Public speaking is about understanding self before we can talk to other people. Um, and so that's usually the first step, is to recognize what our barriers are. For me, it was vulnerability. I didn't want to be in front of groups. I didn't want to be in front of one person spilling my guts out. I just didn't want to be vulnerable, period. And so that was my biggest thing. And again, still is one of the things that I have to really be conscious about when I approach conversations. And if I want it to be an effective one, then I have to recognize that I have to feel safe. And if I don't feel safe in the conversation, then it just may not be either the time or the person to have that conversation with.
Mm.
Um, Second, after recognizing what those roadblocks are and those barriers are, is to going to the root of it and saying, okay, does something need to be healed? Does something need to be fixed or corrected? Or does something need to be confronted? Sometimes we have to confront people in our past to be able to overcome certain roadblocks that are holding us back from effective conversations. A lot of times it stems from parental conversations when we were younger. It stems from sibling conversations. Sometimes it can stem from work. A lot of times when people have issues expressing themselves conversationally, it could be from an inferior complex at work.
Mhm.
So wherever the root is, confronting that. And sometimes we can't always go back. We can't. But I think analyzing scenarios that have triggered the inability to have effective conversations, and then recognizing, okay, was this my fault or was this the other person's fault? And then from there, we can move forward to set a plan. Right. I like to set goals. And these goals are not like these blanket, everybody has the same goals. Clearly, each person's going to have individual goals that are going to be unique to themselves. And so when I work with individuals or groups or my students, we talk individually about what goals are appropriate for them and how they can now set a plan to move forward in how they consciously address future conversations. And, once those goals are set, it's really about now just doing the work and applying. I always tell everyone, public speaking conversations are not going to just magically become amazingly better. You have to actually practice, right? Just like you would practice a speech, you practice conversations. I don't know how many times I've had a pre-conversation to the conversation or pre-conversation to the conversations, because it helps to understand, like, what do I actually want to articulate? What do I actually want to convey to this person? And because you got to remember, when we're in the midst, especially if it's a critical conversation, a difficult conversation, our emotions are going to come into play. And either we get nervous or we get really emotionally upset or compromised. And all the words that we thought that we were ready to say immediately just leave our brains, or we don't have the courage enough to say them. So that practicing of expressing self and knowing exactly what it is you want and want to say is going to be key. So that's really, I mean, the program that I'm about to launch is really about that practicing. Once we've discovered and analyzed and self explored, it's about the practicing and implementation of the techniques.
Mm, that is so good. I love the idea of the pre-conversation to the pre-conversation of the pre-conversation for the conversation.
Yes.
I know I do that. I
Yeah,
know I do that. And
you
sometimes it's with
should.
myself.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's with my business bestie. Sometimes it's with
Yeah.
just my friends or my mom. You
Yeah.
know, can you hear this so you can tell me what you heard?
Yes, exactly. That's really, really important because we may think we're saying one thing, but the person receives it a completely different way. And it depends on our delivery platform, right? Have you ever opened up an email, read the email, and you're like, why they sound like that? Why are they saying it that way? They didn't
Right.
say anything anyway, because all you did was read it. You said it that way, right?
Right.
So it's really important to understand how your words may translate and how you have no control over how the other person will receive it. Only thing you have control over is how you say it.
Yes. So
Yeah.
Jasmine agrees with us. She has pre-conversations as well.
Good. Good, Jasmine. I hope they help.
I really do. I think that as long as we have those conversations with people who will be honest with us, I think it definitely it's a lifesaver for all parties involved.
Hmm.
But it also makes me go back to something that you said right at the top when you were talking about preparing for these conversations and being honest. And so it brought to me the idea because you said you wanted to feel safe, and I said, safety matters
Yeah. Yeah.
in these conversations, which are just hard. They're
Hmm.
hard, and they come from so many different directions. It could be just with a loved one, a family member who maybe offended you, or maybe something drastic happened with you all. It could be at work where you're speaking to your boss, which
Hmm.
usually is a really difficult conversation, especially when it's an offense that has
Yeah.
been made, or even a misplacement or a look over,
Hmm.
um, or even just like your children, you
Yeah.
know, as a parent having to admit a wrong to a child, no matter what that wrong is, or whether it's even directly affecting the child or may indirectly affect your child.
Yeah.
Those are tough.
Hmm.
But having the opportunity to find safety, I think is something else that needs to be explored,
Yeah.
because if it's a situation where the person has offended you or wronged you or misstepped you in some way, how do you find safety
Hmm.
to have that conversation?
Yeah. Well, I always say never to address it immediately. I mean, you don't want to wait too long, but you also don't want to address it in the moment of heightened emotions because it's just not going to likely be a productive conversation. Um, a lot of times when someone has heard us conversationally, they don't realize that they've heard us. So to attack them is probably the wrong thing to do, right? To say, I can't believe you did this to me. And they're like, wait a minute. What did I do? Right. A lot of times people don't even remember that they said something to you that was offensive, which is why I say don't wait too long so that they can reference back to a conversation. But, approaching it with, even saying, I'm about to be vulnerable a little bit. I want to have this conversation. I think people will respect that space and understand, okay, well, this is not just a, hey, how are you doing conversation. Um, starting off with saying, something you said the other day didn't sit well with me or didn't feel right. Um, by using language like that, you're not necessarily pointing the finger that they did something wrong. You're just saying that I didn't I didn't like that conversation style or those words for me. It affected me in this way. I think it's really important not to blame the other person until you know for sure that they maliciously intended to harm you with their words. Because again, we don't we usually don't mean to do wrong when we say things in conversation. We usually don't know that we've offended. So the first thing is to really just have a conversation with that person, as difficult as it might be, and not accuse them, and just say that this is how I felt in the moment.
Right.
And then from there, if they respect and love you enough, then they'll be more cognizant of the words they choose around you to use around you, and or not say certain things to you that they know may trigger. I
Right.
think the closer we get to people in our lives, it's only fair to be transparent with them about the triggers that you may have in conversation. But again, that means honestly doing the work and understanding what your triggers are.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the flip side of that.
Hmm.
When someone approaches you with the
Yeah.
something that you said has unsettled
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Oh, did
Yeah.
it now. How do we work on posturing ourselves for proper receipt?
Hmm.
Okay, you're
Hmm.
getting ready to say something to me that I am potentially going to automatically jump on defense about.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do we posture ourselves in a way that we are there to receive?
Yeah. So posture means a lot of different things to me when you say that. Posture could be physical stance, posture could be how we actually respond back, how our the vibes that we give off. So reception in different formats can vary, right? If we're over the phone, it's one thing. If we're in person, it's another. If it's email, it's something different. But foundationally, in receiving that information as the accuser in that situation, it is most important for you to just listen. As hard as it is to not to try or to just keep from saying something, to say, but I didn't mean it, and I'm just listen, right? If it's over the phone, make sure you've got some okay or some verbal cues that you are listening, because clearly someone can't see that you're listening unless it's FaceTime or a video call. If it's through email, you know, because there isn't an instant feedback there, I would wait to digest the email, read it, step away, reread it, have someone else read it. If you really are bothered by it, right? If it's truly something you're bothered by, before you respond, because email can sometimes get us into trouble if we don't take the appropriate time to analyze the words that are being said, remove our voice from the words that are being said. Okay. I am the queen of like putting voice to email and being
Oh,
like,
yes.
what did this bleep mean? Like, I don't know what she's trying to say right now. I am horrible at it, which is why sometimes I don't reply back to email right away. And then I end up being like 2 days later, because I said, I need some space from this. I need to remove myself because today just might not be a good day, or something just rubbed me the wrong way in this email.
Right.
Um, if it's in person, it's really important to be cognizant of all the aspects of conversation, right? So that's body
Mhm.
language, that's your tone, your voice, and then what you actually say. Um, it's hard as the person on the other end receiving the "you made me feel this way" conversation to not want to defend yourself, because again, 9 times out of 10 you didn't mean it, but you cannot erase how the person felt, right? So again, it's not about you, it's about them in that situation. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just the preparation to have the conversation is tough enough.
Girl. That's why sometimes, especially now, I'm a lot more cognizant about saying, I'm not in a space to have this conversation, because conversations are more taxing and more involved now than I think they've ever been. And if you cannot have it effectively, then it's better to not have it in that moment and just wait for the right moment to have it.
And I think that we need to allot each other grace in that respect because, I mean, so I'm going to use this as an example, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind. My husband and I got married 11, almost 12 years ago because he told me I need to acknowledge that it's almost 12
Mm.
and get past that it's only been 11.
Right.
Yes. So 11, almost 12,
Almost
even though
12.
our anniversary is not until July, but neither here nor there.
That's almost 12 if you think about it, Renita. It
See, yeah,
is.
he said we're past 6 months. And so to round up, I'm not giving it that much. We make 12 when we get there. But one of the biggest things that we had to learn how to do is communicate
Yeah.
because he is a deal with it right now, and I
Mm,
am a you better give me 10. I it don't I
yeah.
shall not respond properly if I
Hmm.
say it now.
Yeah.
So having two different people with two different response needs, I think that's also something that plays into the conversation
Oh,
because
yeah.
he needs to have the critical conversation now because we need to get past this. And with
Hmm.
good reason. He's had experiences where if things fester, they get way worse.
Right.
I am you better give me a few because
Hmm.
have had experience with if we deal with it now, it's not gonna be pretty.
Yeah.
And so I know me. I need a 3, 2, 1.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so in dealing with the critical conversation, not only does it come into play of, having to prep just to have your part in it, but then the piece of, I'm not ready to receive this conversation. Well, I have to have it now.
Right.
Have
Yeah.
you had experience with that? And if so, what's some advice you can give to a person where everybody's trying to allow grace, but your needs need to be met in different ways?
Yeah. So I think different scenarios are going to have different outcomes when it comes to a spousal relationship. Um, it can be hard sometimes to say I'm not going to talk right now, right? You're in the same house, you're around each other, like it's hard to escape. But
But even like at work, sometimes, if it's in the morning,
yeah.
if
Yeah.
you're the employee or the employer, regardless,
Mhm.
if one of you all is a need now and the other one of you
Mhm.
needs 10,
Yeah.
you can't escape that either.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's different for different scenarios. At work, you may not be able to. So this is where we get to stretch our muscles in conversation,
Mhm.
right? A lot of times these conversations at work are not going to be completely emotionally draining or very sensitive to us unless it's an HR conversation, then that's a different topic,
Well,
right?
and or if you built relationship at
True.
that level.
True. And so typically at work, you accommodate the person, the employer, the boss, whomever, right, to
Mhm.
go ahead and have that conversation. But I still think that it is okay, and if it's not okay in your work environment, then you may need to reconsider your work environment. But I think it is okay to be transparent about saying, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed about this conversation right now, and I just need a debrief with myself before we can sit down and talk about this. I think that shows leadership. I think that shows self-awareness and understanding of what you're capable of in that moment. If a manager or coworker, CEO, whoever cannot understand that, then that means they need work on their end, right? So I still think in all relationships, in all scenarios, that it's okay to ask for a compromise in the middle. You have to recognize that if you're asking someone to compromise, they're also asking you to compromise, right? So we've got to meet in the middle somewhere, um, because you're asking them to change a bit. And so, in order for them to change a bit, you've got to be willing to change a little bit too. So, for your husband, he may say, we need to talk about this now. And you say, just give me 5 minutes. That's still a now, but you just need a little bit of time, right? So,
Right.
and that's okay.
Yeah, and over the years we've learned that about each other. And so
Mhm.
we understand that there has to be some level of compromise and
Mhm.
why. I
Right,
mean,
yeah.
that became one of the most critical parts of that was why do you need to talk about it right now?
Mhm.
Why do you need to wait to talk
Yeah,
about it? Because it made sense.
yeah. Well, and
When
then,
the
you mentioned that because of his history, he's recognized that if you don't talk about it now, stuff will happen. Because of your history, you learn that if you talk about it now, things will happen. So you're both basing it off of the past trauma.
right.
Remember? Past trauma will shape how our future conversations are dictated and how they go. So you're both triggered by a scenario. You're both making decisions based off of past trauma, past behavior, but you have to recognize that this is present behavior now. And you guys get to set up how it goes from here on out, right? That past trauma will cause flashbacks. But if the person that you're currently in a relationship with, having a conversation with, isn't demonstrating those same behaviors, you can no longer apply past trauma to them,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I think that's really important for us. And that's usually where relationships go wrong, is because we're saying that they're like the bad things in our past when they've shown us that they're not, and they're willing to show you that they're not, but we continuously label them with with that trauma. So
Right. Wow.
yeah.
So you are doing amazing things with your broadcast, Critical Conversations. I mean, like amazing.
Oh, well, thanks.
And you're welcome. Um, when you are, well, so I ask this question: how do you choose your topics?
Yeah.
Um, and what really is encouraging you to keep these conversations going, um, with people who may or may not be ready to hear them? Um, and yeah, maybe that's it.
Yeah. So how do I choose my topics? Honestly, I just kind of let God lay them in my lap, honestly. It's just one of those, I'm watching a show, my kid says something, I hear something, I read something, and I'm like, that'll be a good topic. Let's see if I can find someone who can talk about it. And then magically, oh, yeah, this is what I talk about. Oh, really? Okay. Do you want to have a conversation? It just literally happens like that. And, when I made the decision to work consistently to have a guest every week, it has not been a struggle, which is why I know that this is purposed, right? I am on track because I haven't had to bend over backwards to find speakers or to fulfill topic requests. Of course, there are topics that I want to talk about, and you gave me an excellent recommendation for one person. But again, it just feels so organic how these topics just blossom that I allow it to be just that. I don't like to have scripted conversations. I don't like to really pre-plan those kinds of things because I think that genuine vulnerability and authenticity that comes out in the conversations is really what benefits anyone who watches them. So what was the second part of the question?
I can't even remember.
I
See,
can't
this is
remember
like we were
either.
talking about writing things down, and that's why I should have
Yeah,
written it
no,
down.
it's okay. It's okay. I think part of what you were saying was, um, maybe the audience impact or
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
something to that effect. Or how do I know that it's beneficial? Something to that effect. Well, you know, one thing that I enjoy most is providing a safe space for my guests to be able to share their stories. Some of the stories that have been shared have been very vulnerable stories. And I think the people that watch recognize the importance of people needing that opportunity to have peace within their stories. Um,
Mhm.
because again, all of this is birthed around some sort of trauma. And it's surprising how much people will resonate, even though they haven't gone through the exact same things. But a story is a story is a story. And which is why the other arm of one of the other arms of word crimes is about storytelling, because that's how we most genuinely connect with people. If we can be authentic and tell our stories, it doesn't matter how many people listen, but when that right person hears it, that's that makes a difference, and it makes all the difference, right? And that's what it was purposed for. Even if it was just one person that heard that story, that heard the conversation, it was meant for them. And so, one of the biggest things that I always tell my students is to not worry about how many people are going to leave changed, not worry about, how many people were sitting in the seats or who were in your view list. Just be concerned about your message and know that it will reach who it needs to reach. And it's not your job to understand or know immediately of the impact that it has, right?
That's
I think a
good.
lot of times we want to know that we've changed lives and that we've, we've made a difference in the world. It's not for us to know. It's just for us to do our job. And by doing our job, the difference will be made and it will be had, but it's not always for us to know.
That's so good.
Yeah.
So when I think about leadership, this is leadership life.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking about impact, sometimes it's very hard, especially in this day and age, of not worry about the numbers,
Mm-hmm.
and to really embrace the impact, no matter what it looks like.
Yeah.
So when you look at the ideas and the concepts that you're working with, how do you express this to leaders who are looking to make a great impact,
Mm-hmm.
who are working to speak well and to communicate effectively? How can not only critical conversations, but this, all of the ideas and concepts and that belong to word crumbs, how can this be best played or utilized for leaders who are well established and growing, all the way to leaders who don't even know their leadership?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm choosing my words. So the title leader sometimes for me comes with false interpretations, or I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but at times when we call ourselves a leader, or when people are seen as leaders, they think that leaders can't make mistakes, or that they're perfect at speaking, perfect at being a manager, perfect at having a team. And a true leader knows that they're not, but some leaders fall into that superwoman, superhero, superman complex of, yeah, I've got this and I'm good at this, I don't need help. But again, it's not about us, right? It's not about me at the front of my classroom. It has nothing to do with me as that adjunct instructor for spring semester of 2021. Has nothing to do with me. And it has everything to do with the people who are looking to me, right? Looking at me, the people in the seats. So when we talk about the leadership coaching and development through word crumbs, we do an analysis of, what do your people think about you? It's not about what you think about yourself. And I go through a process of asking questions, of surveying teams and understanding, and it's anonymous, because a lot of times people feel afraid or won't, be completely honest because they're afraid of what the ramifications might be. And you'll be surprised how often people are shocked to find the results of what people think about them and their leadership style. So, the first thing is to almost strip yourself of that title of leader and recognize, as a person, where are my deficits? Right? Doesn't matter if I'm a leader or not, but as a person, what do I need to work on to be more effective? And to also recognize that you're not always going to get it right. But I think the biggest thing is being able to know how to communicate with your teams, with your household, with anyone that you are at the helm of, and knowing, again, that things may transition and change depending on how teams change, how people evolve, how as they grow up. Like with our kids, we don't talk to them the same way we talked to them when they were 3 and 5, right?
Right.
It changes, it evolves, and I have to get to learn my children again almost every year, every 6 months, as they grow into these little adults. So the same thing happens as a leader, is that we have to humble ourselves to understand that, again, it's not about us, and it's about the people that we are impacting and surrounding ourselves with.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yay. Yay, yay.
Yeah.
I love that idea of relearning your fellowship.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They're changing just like you are.
If anything has happened with COVID, I think it's taught us to really listen to our fellowship, to listen to the people who view us, the people who interact with us. I've done a couple kind of assessments with churches because, everything had to go virtual. And they're like, people just aren't engaging as much. I said, because you're delivering it the same way you would on Sunday in the pew. They're not in the pew anymore. Stop it. Like, stop. Nobody wants to sit and watch a virtual service for 2.5 hours. Maybe some people do, but
No,
the
they don't.
most
They
most
don't
people
love
don't, right? You got to think. I'm scrolling on my phone, so Sunday morning I'm likely it's still in my bed because we ain't got to go nowhere anymore. And so if I'm scrolling, something has to catch my eye, and then it has to be impactful enough in a short enough time before I scroll off of it to make me want to return.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not just about what we say, it's how we say it, how it's delivered. That's the marketing end of it, right? Which is
Right.
another art of things. Like, so that's like there's so much that goes into it that people think it's just like one funneled view and then that's it. But
Mm-hmm.
there's just so many layers to it all. And it's really important to adjust and adapt even when it's uncomfortable for us to do it, but knowing that that's what the other person on the other side needs from us.
Mm.
Yeah.
So being very aware of the other side. I
Yes.
mean, I think that
Yes.
goes with everything that you've talked about tonight. We have got to be aware of
Mm-hmm.
the other side and respect that. We
Mm-hmm.
can't discount anything about the other side of the conversation. We can't
Yeah.
discount anything about the other side of the phone that for
Yeah.
the people who are scrolling to get to our content. We have to respect and be aware, very
Yeah.
aware of what's going on the other side.
Yeah. I think we also have this desire to understand. Like, for me, I want to understand everything. Like, but why? I'm that kid. But why? But
Mm-hmm.
why? Like, I just want to keep asking why. You likely won't ever get the why. Just know that it is. By the time you figure out why, they've changed yet again. So now you got to figure out the new why. Just stop trying to understand why when it's not necessary, and
Mm-hmm.
just adjust, right? Be perceptive. Too often we want to talk because people just want to hear us talk, but we don't do enough listening. And listening doesn't mean that you actually have to hear someone say something. Behaviors is listening as well, right? Observing behaviors is listening. So just listen. That'll do you the best service in life, is if you just listen.
That'll preach. That's a
Yeah.
shirt.
Just listen.
Right. Because,
Yeah.
it's very contradictory to the just do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It is.
It is the polar opposite.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
well, I mean, the thing is, I won't say it's the polar opposite. It's close. Because I would say do nothing is the polar opposite. But just listening, it's far over there, though.
Yeah,
Because
it
you
is.
are watching, you
Mm-hmm.
are observing, you are absorbing
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
But that's still to me an action. So I can't say it's reach do nothing.
True. Yeah. And, I think listening allows you to settle, to understand while listening, what is it that I need to do or say? And what is it that I need to readjust? And yeah, I love that. Just listen. I may get a shirt with the Word Crumbs logo on it. It says just listen. I
Just
like
let
that.
me know. I want one.
Yes.
Maybe two.
Yes. Maybe too. Yeah.
So thinking about your leadership, because
Mhm.
you have a lot going on.
Mm.
How have you adjusted in thinking about your conversations and the way you communicate in all of this change that's going on in the world and in life?
Some days I would say that I haven't adjusted. I'm just going to go lay in my bed and pull the covers over my head and just not talk to anybody. But the days that I recognize where I've come from, I say that I've I've changed a lot, because I've been challenged in so many areas when it comes to conversation, which leads me to know for a fact that this is where I'm supposed to go with word crumbs, because It's so ironic that the person that has had the most difficult time in personal relationships is teaching everyone else how to have conversation. Sometimes I'm like, really, God, this is what we're doing. Like, this is what we're gonna do. But I recognize that because I'm going through some of the challenges that I'm going through in conversation and relationships, it makes me that much more equipped to teach you because I understand, right? I understand. I can empathize. I'm not sympathizing. I can empathize, and I understand what it means to feel and go through certain emotions and experience certain things. So to answer your question, I'm growing every day. I do not get it right every day, but I understand where I need to do the work more and more every day. And that's the work. If we mastered it, we'd be dead. Like, what's the point? Right? So that's the work, is understanding that growth happens daily, and embracing the growth and then applying the growth is going to be what makes you evolve and change into that person, that leader, that mother, that wife, that daughter that's more effective in having fruitful conversations with those around us. And in that growth, people around us will grow too. Like, they'll recognize it. And they may not be able to put their finger on it, but they'll know something has changed for the better. And they'll also start to adapt to that conversation style too. And it becomes a lot easier when you lead by example.
Yes. So I'm trying to think of who it was. It may have been Kennedy Curry a few weeks ago, or I think it was Kennedy. But she was talking. We were defining leaders, and they said, she said that leaders lead by example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I said that's so simplistic, but it's so hard. Because you have a certain thought or vision for what you want the people in your fellowship to achieve. At least, I think good leaders do. They lead with vision.
Yeah.
And I want you to do this and da 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 da. Well, and usually it's something lofty. And if that's the case, and you're the leader, then you have to be that lofty thing, or at least strive towards that lofty thing, and because they're following you to that.
Yeah.
So to lead by example in conversation, it's getting there. You got to start walking to the Mecca. Like,
yeah, it's true. It's
they've
very
got to
true.
see you, making progress on the journey.
Yeah. 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 Because if they can't see it in you, how are they going to trust you to lead them? That's with anything. And going back to the vulnerability, being transparent about not getting it right, like, that makes someone have that much more confidence in you, that you could humble yourself to say, you know what, I got this wrong, completely wrong, completely. So don't do what I did. Right. And let's learn this together. That's okay. That is so okay. So it's hard. Nobody said it was easy. Most days I don't want to do it at all. I don't. Like, I know people are like, she seems real mellow right now. I'm just tired. Like, I'm emotionally tired. I'm physically tired. I'm mentally tired, because it's work. Like, it really is work. And some days I don't want to do the work. And that's just being transparent. And that's okay. Right? That's okay. So yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah. But I think that all aspects, and I think this is one aspect of great leaders and great leadership, to be a leader is not easy if you want to do it well. If you're going to be intentional about it, you're going to recognize it, and you want to do it well, it is not going to be easy. Is it worth it? I think so.
Yeah.
When you see the impact, or if you know the impact is going to happen, because we don't always see it. I think as a teacher, that helped me learn that. I planted a lot of seeds.
Yeah. And we want to see it. We do.
Right. We want to. You till that ground and you water those seeds. You want to see them sprout.
But it's not for us to see.
Even though sometimes you get to see it.
Yeah. No, and it's amazing how you see it unsuspectingly, right? Like 10 years later, you have a student that comes around and says, Mrs. Thompson, remember when? You're like, really? Oh my God, that is so amazing. Like, and it always comes at a time where you need it the most, which is why, like, I don't force it, because I know it'll come back when it's supposed to, if it's supposed to, and it'll be right at the perfect moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we are rounding up on our time, because I try to be cognizant of people's time. And because I appreciate everyone who jumps on here, especially when they jump on live. I know a lot of people watch on the replay. When people watch live, I love you and I appreciate you.
Yes.
If you were going to leave one thought, tip, idea with the people before we leave tonight that you don't want them to forget, what would that be?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I've learned in this journey, and I'm still learning, is that it's not about me, right? As much as I want to think it's about me, how much I think I'm important, it's not about me at all. At all. It's about everyone else, right? There is moments for self-care and addressing self and all that. I'm not taking away from that. But when it comes to conversation and having effective conversation, it's not about you. It's about everyone else that you're speaking with and having conversations with, and understanding what they need in order for the conversation to be as effective as it possibly could be. So remove self out of it, and you'll be more successful. You'll be a lot more successful.
And I'm taking it that you're not saying that say the things to make them feel good and don't handle the business, but be aware of them.
Be aware. Be aware of how they need you to communicate to them, right? Understand what they need to not necessarily feel good, but to feel like they've been heard, right? Doesn't mean you'll always walk away with this smile on your face and, a hug. That doesn't always mean that. But it just means that everyone is clear on what's been said and what's been meant.
Yes. I love it. Well, Kenia, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for expelling the energy that it takes to have this type of conversation, even about these types of conversations.
Right.
And just, for giving us your wisdom, because this is definitely knowledge plus experience.
Well, thank you for having this platform and pushing through every week. Like, this is huge. And I think what you're doing and allowing other women, are you having men or just women? Just us?
Well, it's been some conversation. The men are feeling left out. So there may be some men that show up, even though that is not the full plan, but we'll see. There may be some men that show up this year.
Whomever, women or men, and men, being able for us to meet some amazing people. Like, I think that's the beauty of this platform, is meeting some amazing thought leaders in our community that we may have never ever met before. And so being able to share space virtually is great. And so I thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate everyone who says yes. Because it's not something that you have to do, and it's late, for some people, but apparently this is a sweet time for a lot of people. They love 9 o'clock. They've settled down. This is like a perfect scroll time.
Yeah, I could see that. I could completely see that. So I'm glad you stopped and didn't keep scrolling.
Yes, thank you for stopping and paying attention, and or watching this on the replay and taking the time, because it's huge. So, Kenia, once again, thank you. Thank you, every single person who has watched this evening or watching on the hashtag replay. Make sure you let us know you were here. And I'm going to encourage you, as I do every week, to keep your leadership all the way live. And I will see you next Monday at 9 o'clock with another amazing woman. I know it's a woman next week. As we encourage you and help you grow and to increase your authenticity, pull it together, empowerment, and your impact. So love you all, and see you next Monday.
Bye.